Hello, my name is Bill Lindenfelser, a very long time member of the Zen Center, hanger on. I've been here a long time. I heard John Sensei say one time that the ZC gets the desperate ones, those for whom life just seems to be a procession of highs and lows, disappointments, joys, spectacularly great moments, deep, dark holes. Without a sense to it. Arbitrary, lonely. And then, as Roshi puts it, we're all born with that ultimately fatal condition. And so here we all are. Thank you very much for being here. I was brought up a good Catholic boy. I learned the entire ceremony of the Catholic Mass in Latin when I was 10 years old. I knew my Baltimore catechism, the do's and don'ts of the faith, Mass every Sunday, holy days, extra days just for good measure. Catholic schooling through high school, dyed-in-the-wool Catholic, junior grade. So I'm sitting in religion class one day at Archbishop Malloy High School, grade 11, and I start thinking about all of these beliefs I've been taught for years, and I ask a simple question. Why do we believe this? The teacher hemmed and hawed. I kept probing, and finally he delivered the answer. We have faith. And that just caused an explosion in my head. We believe this because we believe this. An enormous edifice of faith floating without a foundation. That was an abrupt end to my involvement with Catholicism. I went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in 1969 to study physics. RPI is not where you go to seek enlightenment. But most 18-year-olds have little understanding of what they're doing. It was simply the next stage of a well-worn path. And technical schools are not where you go to explore the wider world of understanding, because the grind of courses just keeps budding scientists and engineers so consumed with difficult coursework, there's little time to do anything but. Sometimes, however, when the student is ready, the teacher arises. John Kohler was that first teacher for me, my Dharma uncle. His was a survey course of Oriental philosophies, and when it came to Zen, he used Philip Kaplow's 3 Pillars of Zen as a text. Dr. Kohler was someone who lived the spiritual path. He wasn't just delivering lectures. To a couple of us, he mentioned that there was a Zen Center just down the road in Sharon Springs, New York. That was run by Richard Clark, a man who likewise exuded a deep connection with Zen practice. His Sharon Springs ZC was nominally an affiliate of the Rochester Zen Center, but he was also a renegade, though I did not understand this at the time. Nevertheless, he introduced me to serious and very painful Zen practice. A whole new vista had appeared. I came to see how much delusion I had been mired in, Maybe it was the fundamental, unquestioned assumption of separateness from all that was around me that was the root cause of unease with the world. A window had opened. In the meantime, I had started a career as a teacher of physics at the high school level. We were thrilled at the Sharon Springs Zen Center when Roshi Kapleau decided to visit with a couple of his senior students. We did not know until shortly thereafter that he had come to shut the operation down. Richard Clark was a very loose cannon for the very tradition-minded Roshi Kapleau. This was the first Zen disillusionment I experienced. Philip Kapleau was just shy of God to a very impressionable 20-something. I started to see, though, that Zen is practiced by real human beings. Zen was not free of human difficulty. Nevertheless, I arrived in Rochester the following year, part of a great sloshing wave of 20-somethings to wash ashore at Arnold Park in the mid-70s. I recognize a few faces here from that wave. And since Philip Kapleau is not accepting more students, Tony Packer became my teacher. But by the time of the early 80s, the rift between her and Kapleau became a final rupture, and I went with her to what was then called the Genesee Valley Zen Center. Talk about disillusionment. Was Zen no different than squabbling Christian sects, endlessly dividing over the particulars of practice? And as so often happens, life intervened. I married, my daughter was born, I changed careers, went back to graduate school. I still felt Buddhist culturally, but the practice withered away. I thought my involvement with Zen had run its course. It would be like that for 20 years. And then a new opening of a kind. Philip Kapleau died in 2004. An extraordinary man, but not a deva, just a man. Gone. Just like I would be someday. Suddenly, the absolute necessity of Zen became clear. Great is the matter of birth and death. Now, over 50 years old, there was no question about it. To stay sane while still living, there had to be a route sent down. No more I'm a cultural Buddhist. I had to follow the way. I started sitting again, started working with Bodhin Roshi, went to Sesshin. A lot has happened since then, especially the falling away of delusion. Judging myself? Who is judging whom? What freedom when you start to understand that. Judging others? This is a lot harder. Where is that same spark in the folks around me that's in myself? Relationships get deeper and easier. And maybe dropping the biggest delusion, that I'm pursuing enlightenment. Just drop that completely. Excess baggage. What must be done? Chop wood, carry water. With gratitude to all of you.
All right, Bill.
What happens next, Truman?
Question and answer. We've got plenty of time. So many questions. So Joe's going to set up the Bluetooth speaker here. This is so that people online on Zoom can also ask questions. So we'll just take a couple of seconds to wait until that's all set up. Well, Bill, I will say one thing. You now hold the record for the shortest coming out of 9 minutes and 30 seconds.
I was concerned. My wife Shay tells me that I tend to run on, so I was very, very conscious of keeping it brief and to the point. So I apologize if somebody was expecting there to be a little bit more to chew on, but that's it. I'm sure a lot of people here have very similar stories to tell. You know, mine is one of many, I think, and I think it's maybe a mistake that up to this point I haven't come to hear any others. So I really didn't know what this was like. I didn't know, whether or not I was supposed to run to, I don't know, how long did I go for?
9 minutes and 30 seconds.
Wow, man. So we can all go home. So I just didn't know. But at any rate.
Okay, actually, for the time being, while Joe is still saying things, we're good to go. Sure. All right. But, so yeah, let's start with people let's start with people on Zoom. Let's give that a shot. So Jisai, I know, is on Zoom right now. Are there any questions? Hello? Anything?
So if there's anyone that has a question or a comment, feel free to unmute. Oh, let me make sure you can unmute yourself. Feel free to unmute yourself and then go ahead and speak up. Nobody yet, Truman.
All right, let's do it in the Zendo then. I'm sure we have, Dwayne.
So why do you practice now?
Like I said, it's, when you do have this upbringing as a good Catholic boy, all right, one of the real positives of it is that you come to understand that there's a lot more than meets the eye. It's not just going through the motions day to day to day to day. There's something else there. And even if Catholicism doesn't happen to be it for you, it certainly wasn't for me, you still have this understanding that there is something more to being alive here. It's not just what meets the eye. It's not just what you think. I mean, you can read all kinds of books by rationalists who will talk to you about how God doesn't exist, but nevertheless, there's this wonderful world to explore, and then, yada, yada, yada. And for some people, that's enough, Hey, it's quite a ride, Not for me. As I said, for me, it was driven by a lot of unease, a lot of Well, certainly. You know, it's written right on the Han, right outside there. Right there. And you have to make sense of that. I have to make sense of that. And this is how I start to make sense of it. But as I said, I don't do this with a sense of, well, I'm striving for enlightenment. You know, this is the goal. I mean, if you're an engineer, man, you really, you've got goals in mind, you know, and Gantt charts and, you know, processes and everything else, you know. But I think one of the things I've come to understand is that if I just focus on my practice, things tend to, it works. I think Bodhin Roshi said one time, if you're working, it's working. And I think that's what keeps me going, Dwayne. I just, you know, I understand that things change in ways that I really profoundly don't understand. And that's okay. I don't need to understand the mechanism behind all this. I don't. That's okay. Yes, Sensei.
So, Bill, we've got similar stories in a way, because I had a little vacation from the Zen Center. Mine was more like 15 years, so I bowed down to you.
Having outlasted you.
You did. When I was separating myself from the center, you know, psychologically, you know, I felt a lot of relief. It was like I'm no longer on the hook for this impossible job that I signed up for, and at the same time I realized, yeah, that's a little sus. That's a little suspect. Did you know, as you moved into like one of the things that really struck me was I like normal people. It was. I would come to the center, and there was an awful lot of self-conscious striving for enlightenment. There was a lot of imitating Roshi Kapleau. You know, everybody wore berets because Roshi Kapleau and so that really clicked a button for me, and I said, this is bullshit. You know, I just want to be a person, and I felt this sort of relief to just be okay. I'm just gonna be a person.
Yeah.
And I guess as things progressed, and you know, all sorts of things happened with me, I suddenly became more of just a person, and all of a sudden I realized I really want to practice Zen. You know, and I don't really care about what Bodhin Roshi thinks of me, or Roshi Kapleau thinks of me, or what you think of me. Not even really so much what I think of me, because it's all, you know, it's all the stuff that I'm trying to get underneath and past. But it was, you know, it's really tricky when you sort of suddenly realize, okay, wait a minute, the way I'm going about this is wrong. It's so easy, I really saw that tendency in myself, to start to focus on what's wrong with everybody else. And, you know, there was part of me that really wanted to be able to say, you're all idiots, I'm out of here. And then be off the hook permanently, which seemed like that would be a great deal. I don't know. For good Catholics like yourself, maybe it's hard to ever get off the hook permanently.
Good Catholics are endlessly guilty and are willing to find guilt in other people. I mean, it's just, that's almost an article of faith in it, you know, almost is. And yeah, that's quite something to overcome. Yeah, I think that, you know, just being normal folks is an important realization. You know, really, what is it? I think this is maybe what you were talking about here. That really, what makes me different? What position do I have to judge somebody else? Yeah. I mean, I think that's quite a revelation, and I'm grateful to this place that have helped me to see that. I mean, most folks go through life endlessly judging everything, and boy, what a burden to carry. What a burden to carry.
Yeah, and you can never really train your guns only on other people, and you're going to shoot yourself too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Judgment goes everywhere.
I guess that wasn't a question. It was more like a little mini dialogue, right?
Jokes on in public.
Jonathan?
I wanted to circle back to your departure from the Catholic Church with this faith issue. Because I experienced similar things around the same age. When I treaded into the water of agnosticism, and then really stood my ground as an atheist. And I'm just wondering where I know what it's like when I'm in sesshin. There's a little bit of doubt creeps in every now and then for a lot of it. And
You mean doubt about what you're doing?
yeah.
Yeah.
And that I circle back to faith. And I'm curious what your experience of faith is now compared to what it was. That's what took you away from the Catholic Church. What's your experience of faith now?
That's a really good question.
That's why I asked it.
That's I knew I could count on you to ask a good question. Yeah, I mean, if you're, one thing they don't teach you, okay, the Catholic Church studiously avoids, okay, is where all these tenets of faith come from, okay? And if you start to dig in a little bit, you come to understand that, about 300 years after Christ was dead, okay, a whole bunch of church elders came together in the Council of Nicaea, and they put the whole thing together, okay? And that's what you believe. That's what's in the Baltimore Catechism, Who is God? Well, there's question number one. There's an answer right there, okay? And that's what you believe, and that's what I meant about this edifice. And it's grown since then. It's gotten to be enormous. And that's one kind of faith, okay? Believing stuff that other people just believe. That's for me. That's all it was. But the faith that I have today, and this was said to me here at the Zen Center, and it made, well, being an engineer, it had to make sense, all right? And what was said to me was, just have faith that this works. There are enough people who have experienced this over the course of millennia. Yeah, this works. Just have faith in that. That's all. So when you're sitting there doing sesshin, and your legs are feeling terrible, and your mind is just a blender, okay, of thoughts coming and going, whirring around, you just let go of it. Okay, this is what's happening right now. It's here for now, and you know what? I know something else. It's going to be gone in a little while too. So I'm not going to pay any attention to it. Yeah, I've got some doubts about what it is that I'm doing, but you know what? I really do believe that the experience of so many in the past, the experience of those living today is meaningful. And I don't know if properly that's something you call faith, but it's more a confidence, I guess, in the experience of people. The other thing too, of course, you look at Buddhism. My God, you talk about an accretion of faith and all these gods and everything else, and you can get hung up on that too. It's just, but I don't care about that. In fact, I think generally in Zen, and please, senseis, correct me if I'm wrong here, we don't pay attention to that stuff. Okay, we don't do that. So faith, yeah, it depends upon what you have faith in. I have faith in the experience of people who have led extraordinary lives. That's what I have faith in. James.
Thanks for being here, Bill. You mentioned free teachers, Richard Clark and
Tony Packer?
Tony Packer and Bowden Roshi. What was the difference? Was one of them right?
One of them right?
They
What do you
each-
mean?
They each said, that's how I do it. And then, let's see, then Roshi Capital said, well, you're out. That's how I do it. And
Oh.
he passed away, and then when Bowden Roshi comes in, this is how I do it. You stayed with them.
Well,
Can you,
with
can you repeat the question? We've heard all the rest, but
Oh.
we haven't, it was James, it's just, it wasn't clear.
There were 3 teachers that were mentioned by Bill. He mentioned Richard Clark,
Tony
he mentioned
Packer.
Tony Packer, and Bowden Roshi. And what was the difference? Was one of them right?
Well, that'd be one of those judgment things, wouldn't it, James? You know, who was right and not so right? What do you mean right for me? Is that what you're asking?
No, just right so that they should have a center.
You know, each one of them had, and again, you know, man, I was like 20, 25 years old, okay?
Yeah.
So what the hell did I know, really? You know, this person seems to know what he's talking about. Okay, you know.
So each of them had I like what you mentioned about the spark that is in each of us.
Yeah, and I think you remember Philip Caplow from many years ago, and yeah, he's difficult to forget, and you know, this was a man who projected a sense of he's done it, man. He's I think this is Martin Luther King now coming out. He's been to the promised land, you know, and you want to go where he is. And he very much projected that sense. And he was older than my father, and so there was also that great sense of authority he projected.
He rejected what sense?
He was older than my father, and so
I thought you said he rejected it.
no, and he projected this
projected.
authority that was, you know,
Yes.
yeah, very much so. And so, and that was something. I mean, every one of these people I met had something of them. I mean, John Kohler, for example, is my Dharma uncle. I refer to him. You know, I got to tell you, I feel bad that it took me 40 years to thank him for having started me on the path.
But you did it?
Yeah, I did. I thanked him. Finally. My God, does it take that long? But I thanked him because, as I said, he wasn't just delivering lectures. He had a spark in him. He had actually gone to sesshin with Yasutani Roshi in Hawaii. I mean, we're talking about like, you know, the 1960s he did this. So he too had this quality about him. Richard Clark had that quality about him. Certainly Philip Caplow had this quality about him. Tony Packer, for those of you who remember Tony Packer, a wonderful teacher, really. A very different aspect than Philip Caplow, more gentle, not, I mean, Philip Caplow cultivated a cult, really. And it was pretty harsh. It was a harsh environment here back in the 1970s. Was that your sense, Sensei?
You know, I ducked out before it got really harsh.
Really got, okay.
You know, yeah, absolutely, I got blasted by Roshi Capital.
Yeah,
But, you know, I just, oh, well, whatever. And
yeah, I know.
that affected by it. But, yeah, it was just because so much emphasis was put on coming to awakening.
Yeah.
And because I may have been close, but I hadn't sealed the deal. You know, I was continually feeling inadequate.
Yeah.
And also I was just looking, and this is just too hard, is how it felt at the time.
Yeah,
And, you know, it's just, Roshi Capital probably wasn't the ideal teacher for me.
Mm-hmm.
He did what worked so well for him, and he brought what worked well in Japan, and for some people it was great. And you know, he did tremendous things by getting the center going.
He
and
did.
everything. And it's evolved in a different way. Bowden Roshi, you know, really different, but still, you know, pretty strong guy.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, yeah.
Definitely, you know, really encouraging. But I was able to work with Bowden much more easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, and things went much better.
Yeah, I was greatly relieved when I came back here after Philip Kaplo's death, because boy, it was clear that the atmosphere had really changed, and it was far more conducive for me. You know, especially when you're in your 50s, you're not going to do boot camp anymore. I mean, you're way beyond that, and that's what Zen Center was like in the 1970s. For me, at least, it was boot camp. It was, you know, what's that saying the Marines have got? You know, the few, the proud. You know, that's you make it through this place, and hey, something to be proud of. You know. So it was great to come back and to work with Bowden Roshi. It really was. It really was. Oh man,
There's a question online, whenever
Yeah,
there's a moment.
go ahead online.
Go ahead, Dean.
I just wanted to interject something with respect to Roshi Kapleau. Having been a student of him for many years and also having been very close to Roshi Kapleau, I would disagree that Roshi Kapleau cultivated a cult. I never saw that. I think Roshi Kapleau had a natural charm that arose out of his understanding of Zen, as well as his personality, and his refined personality over many years of training. And people flocked to him all the time.
mm-hmm.
And this was despite the fact that Roshi, as people here who experienced working with him know that he could be very hard, he could be very difficult. But there was nothing cultish about Roshi Kapleau per se. He didn't attempt to create a cult. It was rather that people were attracted to him just naturally. It was a natural charm without him attempting to draw people to him. He wasn't trying to. I never saw that at all. And I spent a lot of time with him both at the summer and in Florida later on. So I just wanted people to understand that. He was hard. He was a hard teacher. But actually, in retrospect, one other thing I'm going to say is that he had very few flaws. In my perspective, in my experience, the one flaw that he had that sort of stood out was that he could be insensitive to people. He could be insensitive. But other than that, other than maybe once or twice I saw him get angry, and that was very, very rare and very short-lived. But otherwise, he certainly lived up to the best aspects of the Buddha Dharma, at least as I understand it.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Peter Grulich.
Dwayne?
Yeah, I'd like to say something about Roshi Kapleau also. I learned that the rules and restrictions here were there to give a context in which to break the rules. I had a makyo on the second day of sesshin one time, in which I heard an encouragement talk that in my mind amounted to, all right, it's time for you guys to start working.
Mm-hmm.
And I just blew it.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Bowden and said, I'm leaving. This was when Philip Kapleau was still in charge. And we were having sesshin here. And Bowden tried to talk me out of it to no avail, and I left. I sat the rest of the sesshin at my own home, the schedule. And when the sesshin was ended, I was in the foyer waiting for an opportunity to speak to Roshi. And when he appeared, I said, I've come to apologize for leaving. And at that time, the rule was if you leave a sesshin, you don't go to any more sesshin.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, come see me Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. And he asked what happened, and I explained what I had done. Audrey Fernandez had been a great ally
Mm-hmm.
and a true Dharma mother to help me understand what was going on in my mind. And he says, okay, all right, well, you do this. Every day, I want you to do something that somebody asks you to do that you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no question at all about me coming to more sessions.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Ben.
Appreciate your acknowledgement of the pain we often experience as new practitioners. And
Sorry, Ben, just raise your voice just a little bit.
yes, right,
Thank you.
right. I was just going to say, yeah, that as new practitioners, we, I think, universally have experienced pain, physical pain, and I was hoping you could speak on like how you've worked through the struggle of that with finding your practice as a new practitioner.
I've always been pretty stubborn, and so when I was in my 20s, for example, I just sat through, really excruciating pain, especially in the legs. It was just, it was bad, man. It really was. And then, on top of that, of course, your mind just starts reeling as you're trying to escape all this, and it's a real horror show. I mean, sessions can be, especially when you're a newcomer, it can be really, really hard. But certainly one of the things I discovered. I mean, this is not new to people who have been around the practice for a while. Certainly, make sure you're physically comfortable. Okay. And don't do things to yourself that add to the difficulty, the physical difficulty of doing it. I'm not a very flexible person, okay? Sitting cross-legged for me, every time I sat cross-legged, every time for decades, my leg fell asleep. After a while, I'm not particularly fast sometimes. After a while, it occurred to me, don't do that, Bill, okay? Don't do that. Do something different, okay? And I started sitting Seiza, and guess what? All of a sudden, that pain in my legs went away, and my practice dropped down to a deeper level as a result of that. It was a big help to just change my posture, just do something different. And I'd encourage anybody who's starting off, just find what works for you. Who knows? Maybe someday you'll be sitting cross-legged, but to just start off like that, sit quarter lotus or something like that. On a zafu and nothing else, that's setting a very high bar, okay, initially, and it's probably experiment a little bit, try the things that find out what works for you. I think it's very very helpful to do something like that, and then, of course, what really happens there then is that your mind starts to quiet down too, and that's the big benefit of it. Now suddenly you haven't got this screaming body to deal with. Now you can start to really focus. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff to deal with, of course.
Right.
But at least you don't have that.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Ben.
All right, maybe just one more question and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure. Hi, Jerry.
It's interesting, we have similar histories in the sense that I think this is my fourth time I've returned to the center.
Wow. Wow.
The first time I was with Caplo as the teacher, and I don't know, I just felt so intimidated I left.
Mm-hmm.
And I came back later and tried it again. So something was attracting me to this.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed again for a short period of time and got married. And two wonderful children, and I was really absent because I wanted to be a father, and then came back, left, came back. So here I am. And so, you know, and it's interesting how similar our stories are too, because, you know, and right now I have this thing, is it the teacher? I mean, the teacher is a wonderful guide, and it's been, for me, incredibly helpful. But when I became a student of Bowden Roshi, he mentioned that he was kind of the finger that pointed the way, but I've got to do it. And I wondered, okay, how important, really important is the teacher? Because the responsibility is on me. And so at any rate, yeah, and this practice does require faith. And even the doubt, to me, is part of the faith now. And I don't understand it. And, you know, I don't know, I think it's just where I am now. I'm kind of taking a break now, and but I haven't stopped sitting.
Yeah.
I'm still, in a way, I'm still here, even
Yeah.
though my body is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
you know, I don't know, it's really amazing how similar our stories are in terms of this.
You know, Jerry, we're just ordinary guys, okay? We're just
Darn it.
ordinary guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you. Truman, is it time to pull the plug, or?
Yeah, it is.